Broadcasting from the Dixon Petunia Festival Sweetland Studios, this is Along the Rock.
Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Along the Rock, our podcast that pays homage to the people of the Sauk Valley and the river that runs through it. I'm Mark Morris. I'll be your host, and joining me today, special guest Carrie Melton from the April House of Children's Advocacy in Whiteside County, or I guess of Whiteside County. Carrie, thanks for coming up.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. And I understand you've done it before, but you decided to change locations a second time.
Yes, we have. We just bought a building in Morrison, where we've been located for since 2002. We are on Market Street. We have gone through some renovations and are very excited to provide a very safe, comfortable location for children and families to come for services. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I guess I lived in Morrison for a few years. Like a lot of people, I'm thinking small town like that, 4,000, 4,500 or so. Is there really a need for a children's advocacy center? So tell me what the need is, how big an area you cover, of course, and what do you handle, if you will?
Sure. So we are one of 41 child advocacy centers in the state of Illinois. We are actually one of the smallest ones, but we're mighty in all of our services that we provide. We cover the whole county of Whiteside County, so we provide services all the way from Tampico, Sterling, Rock Falls, of course, and all the way over to Fulton, Albany area. Occasionally, we help out other sister CACs, for example, Shining Star in Dixon or Tyler's Justice Center in Stockton, and a lot of families are transient or they have family members that live in different parts of the area, and we'll help them out as well. But our bulk of our children and families come from Whiteside County.
Okay. And what does advocacy, in this case, consist of?
Sure. So a general child advocacy center's mission is to provide a safe, child-informed, and trauma-friendly location for children who are involved in an investigation, typically centered around sexual abuse or severe physical abuse. And those situations, they come to us as part of that investigation. And when they come to us, they come through that investigative agency, and we provide not only advocacy services for the caregivers, we also provide what we call a forensic interview. And that is kind of the center of why we're contacted for services. Lisa is our forensic interviewer, highly trained in the Child First protocol, and it is a way for a child to tell that story of whatever may or may not have happened to them in their own words, at their own pace, in a very trauma-informed, specific, very curriculum that it's followed to make sure that we are not leading those children into their answers, or they're giving answers that really tell their story in their own place.
Most people's experience, like mine, probably stem from TV shows.
Right, sure, yes.
And I don't know, tell me how accurate those usually are, if they are, and how are they not necessarily that accurate? Because that's a very sensitive area there when you have a child who has or has not been abused.
Sure. So I think a lot of people probably think of a room with a child talking to a police officer with a window and somebody's watching on the other side of it. Well, this is an updated, softer, easier version for children. It's a much more comfortable setting. They're sitting in a chair next to Lisa. There is a camera and there is a microphone, and that is being closed circuit streamed into another room where there are people watching the interview. So that part is similar but much more child-friendly in that way. So we have somebody that's, a nice person that can sit there, not in a scary guy in a uniform in a basement of a police department, that we all wouldn't want to have to be a part of that. And as far as how court shows go, there's a TV, that's TV for sure. A lot of kids that come through our center, really court isn't the priority necessarily for them. There is a lot of families that want to see justice being done, and we totally understand that, and we're part of that process. But these are really difficult cases to prosecute, investigate, and follow through the court system. So not at any fault of anybody's, it's a really hard system to navigate. It's really not set up for children, it's an adult system. So it's tricky in that way. So Convictions do come out from our county many times, but that's really not the goal of our service. Our service is to make sure that child gets the services they need once they've left our office.
Mm-hmm. And you are a referral agency.
We really are, yeah. Our advocate, Diane, she really works hard with the caregivers. They come in and she meets with them while the child is talking with Lisa. And she gives them the opportunity to find out what their needs are. What can we do to best support the family? Because a good support system for the child is the number one thing that's going to help the children long term. If they've got a good support system outside of our four walls, they're going to have a lot better healing journey than if they don't have that. So she's going to connect those caregivers with trauma-informed therapists, possibly specific medical personnel that maybe needs to do specific exams, and other different sorts of resources. We refer, for example, to the YWCA for advocacy services and court services, housing information. It could be lots of those kinds of resources that people in the community may already know about, but they just need a little bit more information on.
Sure. Okay, shelter, housing.
Yeah,
Where
right.
do they go?
Right.
Where do they go?
Yes. So typically, if it's an adult shelter situation, we refer to the YWCA. But if it's children, we work with foster care families. DCFS is the placement agency for those kinds of things. So DCFS, if they're involved, they're going to make sure that that child has a safe, secure, comfortable home for them to go to if that's the route that the investigation takes them.
Okay. Have there ever been any cases, and no names, of course, but
Sure.
Where a perpetrator, if you will, someone who has been committing these crimes against children, whether they be physical, sexual, or what have you, have had to be controlled by someone at your building or on your staff?
Fortunately, we don't have a lot of confrontational situations. One of our requirements is the alleged offender cannot come to our office, and they can't bring the children. Fortunately, typically when we do interviews, we have law enforcement there too, so we feel pretty safe. We do keep our door locked. It's a restricted access, so not just anybody can walk in at any time. And we're a half a block from the police department, so we feel pretty comfortable in our location.
Okay.
But that's a good question, because we do worry a little bit sometimes about people and their reactions, but we really have a good system.
It's the 61st year of a Dixon tradition. The 2025 Petunia Festival returns July 3rd through 6th with fireworks, music, the carnival, and memories in the making. Plan your weekend at petuniafestival.org.
Yeah, I guess in some ways it's a little bit like the court system in that you just never know when someone's going to explode, so to speak.
Correct, yeah. And a lot of times we find with offenders that are abusive to their loved ones, for example, it's not just a process of them blowing up. It's a process of grooming, and they kind of know who they can get away with it with. We're somebody that would press charges. We're somebody that would call the cops, where maybe a child isn't going to be that first person to do that. They're going to groom them in that process and convince them that it's okay.
How long would a typical case last through your services?
Yeah, so we usually get the information about the investigation very quickly, within a couple days, if not the next day or the same day sometimes. And we try to get them into our office within a day or two in order to complete that forensic interview. And the DCFS and our law enforcement cooperate with us, obviously, to get that scheduled. And then it turns into the hands of the law enforcement to do their report and send it up to the state's attorney's office. And they review those as fast as they can. We have monthly meetings with all of our professionals to talk about what the status is of each case. Some of these can go on for years. There's lots of reasons for that. It's typically the system that is, trying to navigate attorneys for the defendant and making sure all of their rights are followed as well, and there's lots of steps you have to go through in these kinds of cases. So it could go pretty quickly if there's a plea agreement, or if there's a confession. Those seem obviously to go a little bit quicker, but ones that go to court, it's much longer.
Yeah, the legal system tends to stretch things out.
It sure does.
Just by its nature.
It is, yeah, and that's no fault of anybody. That's just kind of the system anymore.
Okay. What are the trends, if you can, if you could feel any, if you could sense any, over the last few years? What kinds of cases keep popping up again and again and again, maybe that were not as evident earlier?
Sure, that's a good question. 63 to 65% of our cases do deal with sexual abuse. I would say that's kind of norm for the last few years, but we do see a lot more situations where we have social media, electronics have played a new part in a lot of the things that we see. It could be related to directly related to the abuse that they're going through, or it could also be some side note of things. We have a few children that have been groomed online and been drawn in through the internet kinds of things. That really has kind of changed how we talk to the kids about things. Probably 5-6 years ago, Lisa didn't ask the questions about that. Now it's almost a regular thing to ask about social media, computer access, and that kind of thing. It's really changed the way things happen. Child pornography is now called child sexual abuse materials. We don't call it that anymore. We call it that child sexual abuse materials, and that really has exploded as well. So there's a whole system in that and a whole investigative arm when we're talking about that with our local law enforcement as well. They deal with that a lot too. And another one is, and it seems like this has been since our COVID days, was what we call problematic sexual behaviors. So it's children that are acting out in a sexually inappropriate way. It might be siblings, it might be kids that are around each other a lot or at different times. Sometimes you have children that come to visit as part of a divided or blended family. So the child on child, which is not the best way to say it, but when you have two children, maybe one might have some more inappropriate actions than others. So we've seen that quite a bit as well.
I suppose in some of those online cases that it would kind of slow things down because the authorities then have to go and find the person who is committing the actual crime, and he may be anywhere close or
right
far away.
Right, and in some cases it is the creation of that material, but sometimes it's just the possession of it. And so they work real hard. We've got quite a few really talented officers in our community, in our county, that really work and investigate those cases. Mm-hmm. Not a thing I would want to have to do, that's for sure.
No, so have to have a certain personality, I think, for that.
For sure.
So what does someone have to do if they have a problem at home and they just simply don't know where to go first to solve it?
Sure. So if you have a suspicion, and whether it's at home or it's in your classroom or in your church or a group or your family or an extended family, or just something that kind of raises, my alert on all of this, it's like something doesn't seem right, this person, or if you actually know that there's something going on, as scary as it is, the first step really is to get the system involved, because whether it's take them to a counselor, sometimes counselors will, be able to talk to them a little bit about that. But if you talk to DCFS or law enforcement, that's when the wheels really start moving. And that's when the investigation would start. And that does seem to be a big step from going from suspicion to all of a sudden calling the police. But that really is how things happen, and that's how things get changed, and that's how kids get protected. And so calling DCFS if it's a caregiver role or law enforcement, and they will respond appropriately. They'll come out when they need to, they'll do initial interviews, and then they'll connect them to us.
Sure. So I guess in some cases 911 might be appropriate. In other cases it might just be the usual office number of a law enforcement agency.
Yep. And they're certainly welcome to call our office, kind of give their explanation. Maybe there's something that we can refer them to. If we can't do anything right away for April House, we can talk through some of those scenarios, talk through some of the options that they might have as well. We're happy to do that.
Mm-hmm. Is language ever a barrier in this area?
We run into it very, very infrequently. But fortunately, we've worked with the YWCA to do some translation for us. I would say our children have almost always been able to speak English. We haven't run into that. It's the caregivers we want to make sure that we're able to communicate appropriately with them. So we've used the YWCA to do some translation for us. So yes,
okay,
it can happen.
Carrie, I appreciate you coming up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Filling
for the
us in. You want to put out a phone number that in case anybody would want to call you directly?
Sure. 815-772-5286 is our general number. You can also visit us on aprilhouse.org. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. You can connect to us through any of those. In case you have just some questions, want to remain anonymous, you can give us a call.
I'd like to thank Carrie for her participation in Along the Rock, and our crew here for putting everything together and making this program a success. I'm Mark Morris. Hope you can join us next time.